AITA for letting my ex-wife's business fail after she dumped me for bringing no value? My ex-wife Carol, 48, and I were together for almost 30 years and married for 25 of them. Everything seemed fine until the last year of our marriage. She grew distant and started making passive-aggressive jabs at me from time to time. As a somewhat naive husband, I had no idea what was going on. I kept doing my best and trying to be a good husband until one day, without warning, she sat me down and told me she wanted a divorce. She launched into a speech listing everything that was supposedly wrong with me. Basically, she said she did not love me anymore and felt I brought no real value to her life. She called me a useless husband who did not earn much and was living off her success. Carol owns a fairly successful boutique marketing agency she started with an inheritance from her late father. When she first had the idea, she decided to quit her corporate job to go full-time. I encouraged her and tried to guide her as best I could with my own sales experience. Over time, her business made a lot of money and became very successful. I handled the client relations and account management side of things, talking to them and building strong, lasting relationships. Eventually, I quit my own job after Carol told me she was earning enough to support us both, so I could help her with the business full-time and take care of our kids at home. I agreed because I genuinely liked working for her company. It was our primary source of income, and it was more than enough for both of us. Once I quit my job, I helped manage her business for over 10 years. The agency was doing very well at the time of our big fight. Carol and I argued a lot about my contribution to the business and the household. She just did not want to hear my perspective and kept repeating that without her, I would be struggling. She also said I relied too much on her business and that without it, I was nothing. I tried to discuss it calmly, but she simply had me served with divorce papers and told me to set her free. That is when I finally understood I was trying to save a marriage that was already over. So, I accepted the divorce without making a scene. I did not want to be with someone who did not love me, and I felt my own love for her diminishing a little more every time she called me a useless stay-at-home husband, among other things. It is true I did not go into the office every day and mostly handled client communications from home, but that did not make me a freeloader. We divorced, and everything went quite simply thanks to a post-nuptial agreement we had signed a few years back. Carol had insisted on it because she did not want me to claim any part of her business since it was funded by her inheritance. Other clauses had been added, like terms for alimony, and we each hired our own lawyers before signing. I am not a gold digger, so I had no problem with the agreement. It might have backfired on me, but I preferred to keep my self-respect. Carol seemed happy when the divorce was finalized. We sold the house, split the proceeds according to the agreement, and went our separate ways. I was in a funk for a while, but I eventually got back on my feet. 6 months passed. I never contacted Carol, and she never contacted me. I did not know how her business was doing, and I was not trying to find out. I had found a new job, and that was my priority. It was not until last week that I found out what was happening at her company. I bumped into one of her former employees, Mark, who is 35, at a local sports bar. Mark was more than willing to fill me in on what was going on. He told me Carol was struggling to keep the business afloat because clients were canceling their contracts one after another. I admit I knew this was a possibility. Carol was right when she kept saying the business was hers, so the success was entirely hers. Here is what she forgot to take into account. I was the one who dealt directly with the clients, while she mostly acted as the owner in name only. She was not very involved. She had hired a lot of talented people with high salaries because she had the capital. Then she decided to sit back and watch the money roll in. She was not a very passionate businesswoman. You could even say she was a bit lazy. She was smart enough to know the work would get done if she hired responsible people, but naive enough to think her own husband was not a key asset to the company. She was absolutely convinced she could just replace me with someone else or take over my role herself. I do not know what she thought was going to happen. For my part, I simply stepped away from her business and focused on finding a job for myself. Every time a client contacted my personal cell about Carol's agency, I just told the truth. I explained that I was no longer involved with her company because we were getting a divorce, so they needed to contact Carol or someone else who still worked there directly. I only mentioned the divorce because they asked why I was no longer their point of contact. Sorry, but I was not going to lie for Carol. Like I said, I had stopped covering for her and had already decided I wanted nothing more to do with her or her company. At no point did I badmouth her. I just stated the facts. Most of the clients I spoke to were shocked and disappointed, even if they did not say it outright. One of them ended up offering me a job at his own company. This man had been one of Carol's clients for over 10 years, so he knew me very well. I got practically the same position I had at Carol's agency, working in client relations, but this time for him. Then something interesting happened. He asked me if there was a better agency they could transfer their business to, and if Carol's company was really the best option. Since I had not signed any kind of non-compete or NDA, I decided to be honest and told him there were better options out there. I knew Carol's main competitor well and knew who could offer a better deal. That is probably where the end of Carol's business began. Mind you, my current boss is the only person I spoke to directly about this. I did not advise any other client to move their business elsewhere. They probably started wondering why things were suddenly so disorganized. Carol had no idea who her clients were or how to take care of them. There was no one to brief her properly. She hired someone, but it would have taken time for that person to get to know everyone. The clients were already frustrated. So, they decided to do some market research and look for better alternatives. They must have found good deals because they stopped renewing their contracts with Carol. I know some went to the same competitor I recommended to my boss, while others chose different companies. Mark was the one who told me all this. He also said Carol was becoming a very difficult boss and constantly creating new problems at the office. She was taking her anger and frustration out on everyone. Since the company is losing money, she is trying to lay off employees to avoid getting further into debt. She easily loses her temper with everyone and imposes unrealistic goals. Mark literally said the work environment has become so toxic that many are already looking for another job, and he himself found a new one. Today, people are afraid the company will go bankrupt because of Carol's disastrous management. I did not know what to say. Inside, I was laughing with satisfaction. Yes, judge me for laughing at my ex-wife's misfortune. She threw me away like I was worth nothing, and now she is facing the consequences of her actions. I feel no sympathy for her. She is a foolish, overly confident woman, incapable of telling right from wrong. She could have become a successful business owner if she had taken her work seriously. She talks about independence, about being an amazing entrepreneur. Well, she could have been all that if she had actually put in the necessary effort and valued the people who worked for her. Her behavior after I left simply proves that she is actually bad at this. She was convinced I would be the one to fail, but the situation completely reversed. It might make me look like a bad person, but I truly took pleasure in learning what happened to her and her business. I did start to feel bad for the employees, but Mark told me most of them are already looking for other jobs or have found one, so they will be fine. I hope they do not end up suffering because of Carol's actions. Again, I know these are talented people with impressive skills, so they should not have trouble finding better opportunities. On the other hand, it seems Carol is going to have a very hard time getting out of this situation. I am fully enjoying what is happening to her. But recently, a friend told me I was a huge jerk for letting Carol suffer like this. According to him, since I helped build the business, I should have a minimum of respect for her and try to save it before it sinks. He also thinks that if I had truly loved Carol, I would not want to see her suffer like this. I disagree. I think Carol never valued me and made it clear that I was nothing, neither to her nor to the company. I never invested a dime in that company. I never had the slightest legal right to it. So, I have no obligation to help Carol. Besides, she has not even asked for my help. To her, I am a useless man who lived off her. Why would I help her after that? My friend is strangely very upset about this situation. Edit. Okay, I see you have questions for me. You wanted to know why I agreed to work for Carol? Well, I agreed because I did not think she would ever leave me like this. I genuinely believed we had a good marriage and that nothing could tear us apart. We made a great team, and Carol often said we were meant for each other. I do not know what happened during that last year of our marriage, but she became very distant. I tried to cheer her up, to make an effort, but nothing worked. She did not want to talk about it and got angry if I pushed too much. Later, she told me she had simply fallen out of love and had started resenting me for depending on her. I tried to make her understand that I was an important part of her business and that I literally worked for her, but she did not see it that way. To her, I was easily replaceable. I guess she got tired of our life. Our kids are grown and out of the house, so it was the perfect time to get rid of me. I do not know if that also answers your questions about the kids. Yes, we have 2 children. They know about the divorce, but they do not know whose side to take. I am fine with that because I will never ask them to pick a side. Our oldest, Ben, is 22 and our youngest, Lily, is 20. So they are grown. Even though they have a hard time understanding why their mother suddenly decided to leave me, they did not find any particular fault in the fact that she simply fell out of love. Of course, we all think it is possible to stop loving someone. I would not have been so angry with Carol if that had been the only problem. I would have begged for a second chance and asked for a trial separation so we could try to rekindle the flame one last time. I would have done anything to win her back. She destroyed that possibility herself by putting me down and calling me useless. And I am not saying stay-at-home husbands have no value. I think it is a huge responsibility, and I deeply respect those who do it. But her calling me a stay-at-home husband was an insult in that context because I contributed enormously to her business. If she had a problem with it, she could have simply asked me to get another job. I would have done it without a problem. But she did not need to insult me or treat me like a burden when I was not one. I did my part, and even took on more responsibility than she did. She is lucky the kids are already grown because there is no way she could have taken care of them the way I did. She had a very good life, but she decided to destroy everything for the wrong reasons. It is always possible she was always this arrogant, and I was just too blind to see it. My God, I really had bad taste in women. It might be a miracle she put up with me for so long. Update 1. I really want to thank everyone who left comments. They were not all positive, but that is life. You always get a bit of everything. Honestly, I did not plan on making an update, but I have a few points to clarify and some things to share. You asked me if I felt even a little guilty about what happened to Carol? The short and simple answer is no. I do not feel guilty because I did not do anything to her. She is responsible for her company's downfall. I was ready to show her exactly how valuable I was, but she refused to listen. This is all her fault. I am not criticizing her because she is a woman. Women can absolutely run successful businesses. I know many. My current boss is one of them, even though I did not mention her gender because I did not think it was relevant. And for those wondering or suggesting it, I am not in a relationship with her. My ex just could not be one of those successful businesswomen because she took everything too lightly. Yes, I tried to encourage her to develop more personal relationships with the clients, but she was not interested. To be honest, even at company events or in similar situations, most people knew me and came to talk to me. She did not see any problem with that. I think she liked feeling untouchable. She did not realize she was destroying her own image. When I stopped working for the company and the news of the divorce spread, many employees contacted me to tell me they missed my presence. Carol never bothered to learn anything about anyone and only saw people as a way to make money. I do not know exactly when she became so obsessed with money, but it happened. You asked if I suspected she was seeing someone else, since everything I described regarding her sudden change in behavior could point in that direction. I thought about it, but I never found the slightest proof. The divorce happened quickly, and she seemed determined, so I let it go. I know I gave the impression of being cold and totally detached, but that was not true. I missed the woman I had married, and I kept thinking about the good years we had shared. 25 years is a long time. The divorce affected me deeply. I think the only reason I stayed sane was that I had to focus on starting over with a new job at a new company. I was also busy looking for an apartment after receiving my share from the sale of our house. It was a chaotic time, and I did not have the luxury of overthinking everything. My children also tried to be as present and supportive as possible without taking sides. By the way, I do have some news about Carol that might interest you. After my last post, she started bombarding me with calls and messages. She is asking me to train the person supposed to replace me because he does not know the existing clients and does not know how to sign new ones. She wants me to help her. I simply replied that it was her company and I was no longer her employee, so I had no obligation to do anything for her. I could not anyway, because I have responsibilities at another company that is now a direct competitor. I do not even know if that could be considered a conflict of interest. She got angry and told me that apparently, I had said I would help her if she contacted me. What is interesting is that this call came only a few days after I had another discussion with that friend of mine who was on her side. I had told him I had no obligation to help Carol and that she had not even asked for my help. I am starting to think he might have told her something. This all seems extremely strange and suspicious to me. I am going to start distancing myself from him, especially since he is the only friend who has not cut ties with Carol. If he is passing information about me to her, then he is not a good friend. At this point, he is clearly crossing my boundaries. I do not want to have someone like that in my life. As for Carol, I will continue to ignore her like I am currently doing. She can call and harass me all she wants. My kids also agree with me. I do not need to help their mother. Like I said, they have not taken sides, but it is not like they think what she did was acceptable. I will not do anything for this ungrateful, entitled woman. That is all I wanted to say for now. You are free to agree or disagree. I know I will still get negative comments, but I have thick skin now, so I will ignore them. Update 2. Who would have thought I would be back with a new update about Carol? I did not think I would be, because Carol belongs in the past, and I am not even in contact with her anymore. But wow, I actually do have news to share. Remember that friend I decided to cut off because he kept telling me about Carol? Let's call him David, 47, a real piece of work. I told David that I did not appreciate at all that he was not on my side, and that he kept pressuring me to help Carol. I asked him directly why he cared so much about her, since he is my friend and should logically be on my side. I was not the one who asked for the divorce, and I was not the one who acted like a jerk. He got angry and said I was a bad person and that I needed to show more empathy toward Carol, who had once been the love of my life. He kept telling me to help her for old time's sake until I told him to stop. At that point, I told him I was going to distance myself because he was being a very bad friend. Harsh words were exchanged, and I ended up blocking his number. I explained to the rest of our friend group what had happened and why I would not hang out with them anymore when David was around. They probably talked about it with their wives, who no doubt talked about it with David's wife, Emily, 42, who is a good person. Emily became suspicious because apparently he had agreed not to stay in contact with Carol anymore. Emily is one of those who think like me, namely that Carol is the only one who behaved badly during the divorce. She had no idea David was still talking to her. She looked through his phone and found some inappropriate messages. I do not know all the details because this is secondhand information. It seems you guys were right. Carol was having an affair, and it looks like it was with David. Right now, everything is chaos, but since I am staying well clear of the drama, it is not my chaos. So I do not have many details yet. I just find it both funny and sad that Carol was cheating on me with David. No wonder he wanted me to help her so badly. As for me, too much water has passed under the bridge for me to care anymore. The only person I feel sorry for is Emily. She did not deserve this. Their kids are teenagers, so they have a lot to deal with. I do not know if my kids know. I have not talked about it much with anyone. I'm just going to wait for things to settle down and maybe send a few words of support to Emily. I also plan to talk to my kids about it. That is all I am going to do. I have much better things to deal with. So, I will just let the information come to me. I know that one way or another, I will hear the whole story sooner or later. Update 3. I asked if you wanted an update on what happened with David and Carol. The internet answered. So here I am. I received a lot of comments asking me to share all the details and confirm if the rumors were true. It took a little while, but I am here to give you the whole story. In my last update, I mentioned that David's wife, Emily, had found evidence on his phone of a possible inappropriate relationship with Carol. Well, that theory was confirmed. Emily made the information public. She made sure all of David's friends, including me, found out what he had done. David and Carol had been having an affair for a year before our divorce. That is why my wife suddenly did a complete 180 with me. I have to say her change had started even before the supposed start of the affair. Maybe the relationship is older than we know, or maybe she had already decided to go down that path, which would explain why she mentally detached herself from our marriage. David was unhappy because he could not live a luxurious lifestyle like mine, while Carol was simply bored. It is not clear how the affair started, but it did happen and continued after the divorce until Emily outed them. However, once everyone knew, David started begging Emily to forgive him and cut all contact with Carol. Carol completely lost it at that point and self-destructed publicly because she thought she could play the victim. She said David had used her and abandoned her because her business was doing poorly and he was only with her for the money. I think there is some truth to that. He was probably harassing me to help Carol because he was afraid she would stop being his sugar mama or something like that. I am realizing there are a lot of completely unstable people around me. The good side is that I am cutting ties with all of them. It is both strange and sickening. Those two have no shame and no morals. Carol really lost her mind because dragging David publicly only destroyed her own image even more. Her life has become a live-streamed train wreck. She focused so much on her revenge against David that her business continued to decline. From what I hear, she is going to have to declare bankruptcy soon. I know this because she called me just yesterday, crying to apologize. Carol is in a desperate situation right now. Her business is closing, and she has practically lost all her savings. The kids already found out about the affair because of her own actions. They decided to distance themselves from her. My youngest son was actually cheated on recently himself, so he is particularly angry with his mother. He is currently living with me because I know he is going through a tough time. She is completely out of control, and even some of her family members have contacted us to try to convince us to help her. My answer is always no. She is not a child, but a grown woman. She is perfectly capable of facing the consequences of her actions. She should have thought before starting an affair with David. Speaking of David, Emily is divorcing him. She actually met up with me, and we talked for a long time. She is divorcing him because infidelity is an absolute red line for her. She is facing some difficulties, mainly because their kids are still minors, and there will be child support issues. But she is relieved to have made this decision. David is still begging for another chance, but she is too disgusted by him to even talk to him. I think she is making the right decision. She is also receiving a tremendous amount of support from all our friends, which is comforting. Their kids are old enough to understand what happened, so she does not really need to explain why their father no longer lives with them. Oh yeah, David got kicked out of the house. I should also mention that Carol will very likely have to sell the condo she bought because she has no money left. Karma really hit those two hard. I do not have much more to say about them. To be honest, witnessing all this did not make me feel much. I just found it entertaining. Now, I think it is time to talk about the juiciest part of this update. In my previous post, some users who are lawyers or have legal knowledge asked me questions about the postnuptial agreement. It was basically a document Carol wanted me to sign to protect her business assets. While the inheritance itself could not be split in a divorce because it is separate property, the business it funded could be considered a marital asset. The agreement even contained an infidelity clause because her lawyer had recommended it, and she had agreed, since at the time, she was fiercely opposed to any form of cheating. It was a complex contract that I had not paid much attention to, but it stipulated that if one spouse was unfaithful, there were consequences. For me, that meant I would not get half the value of the house since she had put in the majority of the money for the down payment. In case of a divorce without infidelity, the house was considered community property and split down the middle, which is what happened. However, in case of infidelity on her part, the entire contract would become null and void. That last part was my lawyer's suggestion, and I thought it was fair. The divorce was already finalized, so I thought it did not matter anymore. But the cheating happened during the marriage, and in that case, the contract's terms are still applicable. Several of you, as well as my divorce lawyer, confirmed this to me. This affair changes a lot of things, especially the division of assets. Because of the infidelity, the postnup is voided and all marital assets, including the business, become subject to division. You are going to tell me, but the business practically does not exist anymore. It is on the verge of bankruptcy, sure, but the financial situation is evaluated at the time of the divorce, not today. I do not expect to get much back because Carol has almost nothing left. But what is fair is that the original divorce settlement be reevaluated, and my lawyer will ensure the law is applied. I am truly sorry my ex-wife is not even capable of respecting the clauses she herself had demanded. I know this is going to trigger those who call me a jerk because I am taking pleasure in my ex-wife's downfall. If the only way not to be one is to be a doormat and help my cheating ex save her business, then I am very fine with the way I am. Edit. No. I have no intention of resurrecting Carol's business for myself. First, I am comfortable in my current position and I do not want the extra responsibilities. Second, the business has already dug its own grave and is just waiting to be pushed in. Reviving it would practically mean starting from scratch, and I have no desire to do that. Some of us are simply happy with a good job and limited stress. Update 4. There were still a lot of gray areas in my story regarding my divorce, my ex-friend's divorce, and Carol's business. So I wanted to clear them up with this update for you and for me. in order to turn the page for good. To me, it feels like a symbolic closure to this chapter of my life. At this point, I simply want to stay very far away from this situation and consider Carol, David, and this whole story as belonging to another life, a very distant past. Carol's business has officially closed. The few clients they still had to find alternatives. The website is offline, the social media accounts have disappeared, and the employees are now working elsewhere. I was very worried about the employees, so I followed this situation closely these past few months. All of them have found new jobs. One of them was even hired by my boss to manage certain tasks we used to outsource, which are now done in-house. I see this as a happy ending because even though losing your job is never pleasant, almost everyone was unhappy at Carol's during the last few months, not only because of the direction the company was taking, but also because Carol was a difficult person to work for. Those are not my words, but those of some former employees I talked to. Emily divorced David and played a key role in my legal case against Carol, which I will explain now. She provided evidence that was crucial. As for her own divorce, she really took my ex-friend to the cleaners. Their kids decided to live full-time with her. She got child support and alimony, and even the family cat left with Emily. I do not know what David has left because even his dignity packed its bags and will not be coming back. He also ran into problems at work due to the stress from the divorce, his depression, and what Carol did to him. In his shoes, I would have wanted a friend by my side, but he does not have many left, if any. Regarding the post-nup and the infidelity clause, we reached a settlement. Partly because I did not want to drag this case out for months in court, and partly because we knew Carol did not have much left. The only money she had came from the sale of her condo and a car. Well, all of that is mine now. We agreed on a lump sum payment that practically matches everything she got for the car and the condo. Honestly, recovering every penny I would have been entitled to under a full reevaluation would have been impossible. With her current job, it would probably take her several lifetimes to pay anything back, and she would have argued in court that she barely earns enough to live on. That is why I accepted this settlement, so I never have to deal with anything regarding her ever again. The settlement also includes a strict no-contact order and a clause preventing her from speaking about me publicly in any way. As for my personal life, my kids, and dating, nothing has really changed. Yes, I am seeing someone, but it is too early to say anything serious, and I do not think it is particularly relevant. Edit. I think some of you do not understand the legal aspects. Even my lawyer recommended this settlement. Suing my ex for small monthly payments would have been a very bad idea. It would have meant paying my lawyer, possibly more than the payments themselves, just to keep the legal action going, letting my ex live rent-free in my head, and staying constantly stressed. I do not see what kind of karma or revenge I would have gotten out of that. This way, it is a clean break. Comment. Reading about this situation reminds me of how incredibly important it is to know our worth. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is quietly walk away from environments where your contributions are no longer valued. It is easy to get caught up in anger or a desire for revenge when someone hurts us deeply. However, true healing begins the moment we decide to prioritize our peace of mind over proving a point. Life has a natural way of holding people accountable for their choices, so you do not have to carry that burden yourself. Setting firm boundaries is a healthy choice that protects your mental health and your future. You never have to sacrifice your dignity just to keep the peace in a broken situation. We always have the power to close a painful chapter and rebuild a life surrounded by genuine kindness and mutual respect. I truly hope this encourages you to stand tall in your truth and never settle for less than you deserve. Please share your thoughts on setting healthy boundaries in the comments below. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.